summer, the AC is really warm and cozy, so I'm very fortunate being able to get exactly what my attachment wants. Press the buttons and I get what I want. But I shouldn't waste it, should I? Okay, we're all here, are we? So happy to see you all. Thank you, Diana, as usual, being my Russian voice. Okay, let's start as usual with our aspiration, right? Do we have the prayers up there? I forget, Anastasia. Should we do that? Do we have the prayer? I forget. Huh? Yeah, okay, there you go. So we'll just do our little prayer. It's got two parts. And we'll do the mandala first. We'll do the mandala first, the short mandala. And this is really the center. It's all the people there and new people, all the FPMTs, whoever's doing, Anastasia in the center, offering a mandala to the Buddha as a request for the teachings. It's like paying for your coffee when you go into the cafe, or coming with a bottle of wine when you visit your friends for a dinner. You don't go empty-handed, do you? Well, the same here. So it's auspicious to start with this and imagining all the marvelous things of the universe that we're going to offer the Buddha as a request for his teachings. This is the Mandala Offering. So you say it once in Russian and I'll sing it once in Tibetan. Anastasia.
Yes. Эту мощеную благовониями и покрытую цветами землю, великую гору Меру, 4 континента, солнце и луну я представляю, как волю Будды подношу, да насладятся все существа-скитальцы жизнью в этой чистой земле.
And then we'll sing in Tibetan. So you visualize, imagine all the marvelous things of the world. I mean, if you don't know Buddhist cosmology, don't worry. Think of all the marvelous things of the world that make people happy. You make offering of beautiful things of the world to the Buddha. Imagine, pile them all up in your mind. Use your creative imagination. Saji perki jugshing metog tramri rablingji ni de genpadi sange jingdu mikte ulwagi drokon namdag jingla chupashok. And as we say this little Sanskrit mantra, we imagine the Buddha happily accepts our offering. Hidam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. And now the other prayer at the top. This is the first two lines reminding us of our reliance on the Buddha and his teachings. And the second two lines stating this marvelous bodhicitta aspiration, this marvelous long-term view, that the reason we're doing this activity of listening to these teachings is the short-term view is so that we can die well and help other people die well so they can keep on moving and get another decent human birth, or maybe a Pure Land birth, so that the long term, so we can all become enlightened, so then we will be qualified to be of benefit to sentient beings. Say one time in Russian, and I can sing in Tibetan.
В Будде, Дхарме и Высшем Собрании ищу прибежище вплоть до просветления. Силу заслуг от практики даяния и других парамид достану я Будды на благо всех существ.
Sangye chadam soke chognam la jangcho badu dagni kyab suchi dagi chönyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye drupa shok sangye chadam soke chognam la jangcho badu dagni kyab suchi dagi chönyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye drupa shok. That's 3 times. Together. Okay, thank you. So I think, where are we? The gallery view bit for me. Okay, we've been looking over this. We've been using Lama Zopa Rinpoche's book, How to Face Death Without Fear. It was called something different earlier. And basically, as you can see, or as you know, it's a handbook. It's basically the background of what the Buddhist view of, what death is, why we have so much fear of death because of attachment. There's a section on Rinpoche discussing from the Lojong teachings, the more advanced teachings in the Bodhisattva path, a way of dying with what they call the 5 powers. I never talk much about that, but Lama Zopa teaches that. But the essence of it is to live your life in the framework of bodhicitta, basically. Bodhicitta, which is very advanced. So we've been talking about also just living living your life in the context of the fact. Sorry, I have to cough.
Venerable, we can't hear you. Venerable, you need to unmute yourself, please. Андрей, дай, пожалуйста, достаточно...
Okay.
Ага, окей.
So then, so there's 5 powers are all about dying. The chapter is there, dying with bodhicitta, basically living your life in the framework of bodhicitta. And then at the time of death, your mind will be very happy. You'll have a happy death. So so then the book is then technical advice about the death process, which is in the Vajrayana, the 12 links, the role it plays in the death process, which is the Sutrayana teachings. Then most of the book, really, the next 3 parts are all advice, basically. The advice in a chronological order. What to do. The whole book is geared to how to help your loved ones. This is the point, you know. Obviously, advice for us, but you can't help anybody else if you don't know how to die properly. And so, of course, a dying person who doesn't know anything can't help themselves either. So it's the most practical way to approach the book is to help your loved ones die well, including the mouse in your kitchen, the ants, your pets, etc. So the first, second parts of those, and the third and fourth, fifth parts are in chronological order, the lots and lots and lots of practices that you can do at different stages. So the first one is all what to do the months and weeks before death, what to do the day, you know, the days before death, the hours before death, at the time the breath stops. It's quite specific instructions, you know. What to do the 3 days after death, before the mind leaves, and then what to do after the mind leaves, and then what to do for the next sort of 49 days, which is this traditional thing in Tibetan Buddhism, in the Vajrayana, that it's likely that the mind, when it leaves the body, spends at least 49 days, at least 7 weeks in this intermediate state, the bardo, between death and the new rebirth, you know. So I think we mightn't have mentioned all of that, but we'll discuss that as well. So what's the point of all this book? As I've mentioned before, the essence of it, the essence of the entire book is, as Rinpoche says, if you want to help anybody during their life, the mouse, the ant, the baby, your grandma, your pet, the time they need you most is the time of death. And it's a simple technical reason, which is explained in both this 12 links section and the 8 stages of death in the Vajrayana, that it's about the time before the breath stops, which is about the fourth state of the 8 stages of death, according to the Vajrayana. It's this technical process of this gradual dissolution of all the components of a person, the gradual deconstruction of all the components of the person. And so at about the second or third part of that, before you stop breathing, that's when the karmic seed that will determine your next life, that's in your bank vault of billions of karmic seeds, because everything you think and do and say throughout countless lives are stored in your mind, nothing goes astray. It's like, so everything you think and do and say sows seeds, and those seeds don't just disappear. And the one that will determine the next life you get is triggered at this period. So the simple point is this. The next point is this. We have negative state. We've discussed this. We have neurotic, deluded, I-based, fear-based, unhappy states of mind, attachment, anger, jealousy, and they're all rooted in fear. When they're prevailing in our daily life, and certainly at the time of death, we're just driven by anxiety and fear. The mind's a mess. And you can't make any wise decisions. You're just gripped by fear. We know that experience. So if the mind's like that at the time of death, then that, just because it has a natural relationship, because when the mind is fearful, it's linked to the delusions. It's linked to attachment and anger and jealousy. So then it will just naturally trigger a negative seed, a seed that's been planted in your mind from a past action that was driven by anger, attachment, jealousy, etc., etc. It's a logical thing. It's not punitive. It's not judgment. It's not reward. No one's running this natural law of karma. And if the mind is peaceful, which means that the attachment and the anger and the jealousy are kind of quiet, and contentment and confidence and the mind being more relaxed and virtuous and love and generosity and compassion, if they are prevailing, then the mind is peaceful, then that just naturally triggers a positive seed. We have many positive seeds in our bank vault, from not killing, from living in vows, from our past practice. Then that will trigger one of those, and that's the wish. This is the essence of it. It's a technical point, not wholly religious, heavy, difficult, which means you have to understand this process, which means you have to understand karma, which means you have to understand how to live your life within the framework of a spiritual path, living in ethics and vows, so that when the time of death comes, you'll be ready for it, baby. It's very practical, but because it's religion, we think it's fear, we think it's judgment, we think it's reward, we think, someone's, but we have to get past all that. We have to realize that we are in charge of our life and our death. So that's us. Now, how do we help our loved ones? The mouse doesn't know what to do. The baby doesn't know what to do. You may be your poor old grandma who's led a good life, been a very kind person, but she's never looked at her mind. She's never thought about the meaning of life. She's never thought about impermanence. She just followed her feelings like most people. So when the time of death comes, of course there'll be fear, naturally. So then you have to be there to help them navigate this. And to do what? To help them be peaceful and virtuous. That's it. So all the different advice in the book, as we've been talking, the very first section is how to make the place conducive. If let's say the person has got weeks to die, and some people die suddenly, we know that. But this is the ideal scenario, to have a few weeks in advance, months and weeks. Well, you have a really happy, a friendly, conducive place in which your grandma is there. The little bird that you've saved, just put it in a little box where it's safe and secure so its mind can calm down and be peaceful. Same with your grandma, same with the baby, same with your pet. So for the grandma, let's say she's a Christian and she loves God, and you have pictures of Jesus or whatever she likes. You've got to know the person's mind, as Lama Zopa says. We're going to summarize what we've talked about over the weeks, okay? So then you make the room really pleasant. Many sick rooms, or rooms in hospitals are so unpleasant. They're noisy and clunky and noises and loud, and other people's emotions, and other people's families, and doors banging. It's about the worst place to die. One of the key things is because when you're getting sicker and you're getting towards death, your mind gets more sensitive because you're moving towards your subtle mind. Your grosser level of consciousness is beginning to cease. So you're very sensitive to sound, any sound, the slightest slightly loud sound can make a person freak out. So you've got to make the room so conducive, and all the more if they're in a coma. We tend to think, oh, they're in a coma, it doesn't matter. It does matter, because their subtle mind is conscious in the coma, and then when you're so often in a coma or even in a dream, people report this, you can be conscious of what's going on around you. So even then, nothing should be there to disturb them. Everything that they see or hear, if they're conscious, should help their mind be virtuous. So if you've got your Buddhist friend, and they're a student of Lama Zopa, let's say, you have pictures of Lama Zopa, you have the pictures of the Buddhas they like, you have, the things they see, the things they touch, the things they taste and think about and talk about, all these chapters of this, help it for them to be peaceful and happy. Because you don't want attachment to rise, which is, we don't understand the difference in our culture. We think attachment's kind of like love, it's nothing to do with it. It's terrible. Attachment, if things that are in that room that will agitate their attachment, it'll freak them out, like their pets. Keep the pets out of the room. This is shocking for us. But that just agitates their mind, makes them more attached and more fearful of losing them. If you have certain family, if you're in charge of the process, if you're not the boss of this scenario, you can't do much. But if you're in charge of your grandma, you can organize who can come, who can't. You don't be like a policeman, you be kind. Could you keep people out who are troublemakers? You don't have any discussions about the will while your grandma's dying, for God's sake. Everything that goes on in that room should be solely for the sake of your grandma. Can't be stressed enough, to help them be peaceful and therefore virtuous. So what to see, what to touch, all the different things, like a prayer wheel, like having a text on their head, like having a blessing string touching their skin, all these things. Rinpoche has got great confidence in these types of practices, Then what to hear, all the thousands of mantras Rinpoche has got, all different kinds of mantras, what the sutras, the different teachings, what to think about, what to talk about. If your grandma's a Christian, talk about heaven. Tell her how wonderful heaven is so she can look forward to heaven instead of holding on to this one. Make her mind happy and expansive. So many, all this practical advice, I tell you. Then what practices to do? There's a whole level series, all in order of difficulty, you know. So the ones who've got no practice at all, maybe you can lead a little meditation on compassion. Maybe the most advanced practitioners with, say, a highest yoga tantra, you can do their practice for them. You can do the self-initiation for them. There's many different things, all these different things that you can choose. I mean, all the practices, the biggest part of the book is the 2/3 of the book. Is all the last part, which is all the practices numbered from 1 to 87. The sutras, the practices, the meditations, you know, the prayers, all there. But I mean, the Brahma says you choose one practice that can be medicine Buddha, the most powerful, the most marvelous. So there's so many things to do. And if you just go through this book, it'll give you sort of confidence, because as Lama Zopa says, this is education we all need. This whole book started, I told you, this whole book started back in 2001 or 3 or something in France, from which I was teaching there at Institute Vajrayogini. And on another topic altogether, and one of his older students came and said that her father had died suddenly and she didn't know what to do. So Rinpoche probably was surprised. I mean, she's a Buddhist. She's been hearing about death and impermanence. We all hear about death and impermanence. We know that. But we don't like to think about it. So we don't internalize it. And then when death comes, we have a panic attack. And then we give all our power over to the ambulance, the doctors and the nurses. That's their job. Let them do their job of taking care of the body, but our job is to take care of their mind. We need this education. This book is so helpful. Even other people who aren't Buddhists can learn from it. It's very helpful. I see that. People who come to courses, when we could go to places once upon a time, you know, we'd do courses on this book. I mean, funeral home directors would come. Christians would come. People love this for their animals. People, especially people, even they maybe not have faith in Buddhism, they want to do something. They all want to do something for their animals, let's say. There's so much in here you can do. It makes you feel so much better. From our side, but the benefit is for the animal. So we've talked about all this. We went through the 8 stages of death. And I'm sure for those who've got highest yoga tantra initiation, I think I did go through the chapter that's called Death is What the Yogis Have Been Waiting For. The importance, if you've got a highest yoga tantra practice, then doing your sadhana properly and combining the dissolution of the deity into you and dissolving into emptiness, how that is completely utilized, combined with the process of the death process, how to be reborn, etc., etc. It's really skillful. Everything is geared in those practices. And as Rinpoche says, advice from Serkon Rinpoche, we definitely must do the whole death process combined with the dissolution of the deity into us in our sadhanas, especially of our own yidam, at least that one. This is the best preparation for death using Tantra, Rinpoche says, you know. And again, why? Why? What's the logic? Even why? Even why? Even, you know, why? Because at the time of death, at the very least, is to make sure your death is your mind is peaceful, so you get another decent human rebirth or a pure land. I don't think I've talked about the pure lands. Did I, Anastasia? Did I talk about Amitabha's pure land, Anastasia? Do you remember? Did I, Diana? Do you remember talking about
just a little bit? There was somebody who asked about pure lands, and that time we touched a bit about pure lands. Not much.
Did I describe what it is? No. Okay, I will do that.
No.
Even if I have, I'll do it a second time. Don't worry. Don't you worry. Okay. Okay. So, but the reason for the yogis and the reason for us, if we've got a highest yoga tantra initiation, doing a sadhana every day, practicing becoming familiar in our meditation with those 8 stages that will happen at death. It's a bit like when you've got a driving test in a month. You don't say, oh, I'll wait till I get there and I'll be fine on the day. No, you won't. Guess what you've got to do? It's so obvious. You've got to practice driving now. Well, the same with death. Practice going through those 8 stages. Become familiar with it by meditating on it. It's so logical. Then at the death, you might even be familiar with it. Wow. But the real point is for the greatest yogis who are qualified, because they have been capable throughout their life to get their mind, because they've got single-pointed concentration, they've been able to get their mind to the very subtle level, which is the entire point of this whole exercise, because that very subtle level, known as the clear light mind, that's like the microscope of your mind, and that's the level of mind that's capable of realizing emptiness and removing all the pollution from the mind, realizing emptiness and removing all the delusions from the mind. At that point, the greatest yogis can actually get enlightened. It's a practical issue. Not some hippie, trippy, religious, wow issue. Okay. So there's only two options, really, and Rinpoche repeatedly repeats this throughout the book. Either to get of all the options of types of rebirth, and as we know well, if we've studied the Buddha's teachings even a little bit, Buddha's view of the entirety of samsara, samsara consists, the bigger picture of what samsara is just the name given to this entire, this being reborn life after life after life after life after life in this kind of all these different suburbs in samsara. The top suburbs, and this is coming from the Hindu teachings, the top suburbs, the best suburbs, said to be by the Hindus actual liberation, but not for the Buddha, is called the Formless Realms and the Form Realms. These minds that are so deeply in the absorption of samadhi, concentration, that for them that's the final state. For the Buddha, they're still in samsara, sorry. So the defining characteristic of being in samsara is that you've still got the root delusion that clings to the self-existent me in your mind. That hasn't gone yet. So that even in the peak of samsara, in the best suburbs possible, that hasn't gone yet. That's where Buddha diverged from those Hindus. So then you've got the God realms. So there's three realms: formless, form, and desire. In the form, they're these beings of the subtlest level. You can't get more subtle. You can't get more absorbed. They don't even have any other aggregates. There's no physical energy at all. Just subtle mind, absorbed in concentration and absorbed. Then the formless is slightly grosser. And then you've got the desire realm, and we're in that one. And there's 6 suburbs in that one. The top suburbs, the best ones, the fruit of virtue, because remember, everything we think and do and say that's positive ripens as happy experiences, and one way it ripens is a happy type of rebirth. So the best, happiest type of rebirth in the desire realm is a God realm. That's equivalent to Muslims' paradise, Christians' heaven, in terms of happiness, but not the best rebirth for the Buddha, because you're so blissed out with joy. You've got this subtle light body. Your mind is completely blissful. All the karmic appearances are of joy and bliss. Everything's radiant and joyful. You have created it. No one sent you there. You're the boss. But you're so blissed out, you don't realize that you're still in samsara. You don't realize that you've still got imprints of the delusions in your mind. So actually, it's the worst rebirth to get, in a sense. The bliss is so gorgeous, but the petrol tank runs out eventually, and you get down to the lower realms again. So that's the God realms, a couple of those. Then you've got the humans. Now, this in terms of bliss is no way as nice as the gods. And look at this. This is not a body of light, is it? Look at it. A bag of bones, a walking sewer. But for the Buddhist approach, it's the most advantageous rebirth because we have access to our virtue. If we're fortunate, look at the 7 billion humans all going berserk. You wouldn't think they had access to their virtue. Or we use our intelligence. We've got access to intelligence, but we use our intelligence in the wrong way. Intelligence in the sense of being able to think of things from a different point of view, being intelligent, being capable of thinking things through. That's the great brilliance of the human mind. And that's what's needed to help us get enlightened. So the suffering in this life, and even the happiness, is nothing like the God realms. And the suffering is nothing like the lower realms. But it's the most advantageous. It's the one in which we can do something with ourselves. We've got access to our virtues and wisdom, which is incredible. So then you got the lower realms, which are the fruit of the predominance of the three poisons, the 3 toxic emotions. So the predominance of ego grasping, ignorance, the root delusion, is the animal realm, where the mind has got, because Buddhist psychology, remember this, refers to all beings in all universes. It's not just for humans. It's quite different. So the animals we have got the same delusions as the animals. They've also got ignorance, ego grasping, which is fear. They've also got attachment and anger and jealousy and pride and all the delusions. You can see it in their behavior, but a billion times more strong, and no access to their virtue or intelligence. That's the tragedy. So I always quote, Lama Zopa said years ago to somebody, a friend of mine told me, that Rinpoche said that if we could just for a minute have a direct experience of the mind of our own little doggy, who we think is so cute and so gorgeous, whom we would never think is suffering for 1 second, mentally. If we could have just for a moment a direct insight into their mind, the suffering, the mental suffering, the torture, the nightmare of the fear and the delusions, which are the root of our suffering, would be so unbearable that we could never wish to waste another precious second of this amazing, precious human life. This is very shocking to hear, you know. Then the animal realm, then got the spirits, many more of them who you know, because the mind is conjoined with the four elements, then our body is made of the four elements. We can see we've got a body very similar to an ape, haven't we? I mean, before the human planet, a human birth was more like a God realm in terms of the subtlety of the body, the subtle light energy. There's so much virtue, but there was also intelligence, so we can get enlightened. Now we're just born on a planet looking like a bunch of apes, aren't we? It's not so cool, degenerate times. So then there's the spirits whose minds you could say are conjoined with the air energy. They don't have, you can't see them with your eyes. Sometimes we can see, some people can see them with their subtle mind. When you're clairvoyant or you see that, you know, there's a ghost in that house. That's, you know that that's a spirit. There's many kinds of these, trillions more than the animals. And it's clear there are trillions more of the animals than humans. So it's evident it's harder to get a human birth than an animal or a spirit. And that's a predominance of attachment energy. All this is Buddhist psychology, you know. It's not punishment, it's not reward, it's not superstition, it's not speculation. It's coming from the observation of the Buddha and anybody since the Buddha who's also become a Buddha and has seen this, you know. And that the worst suffering, the lowest suburb, the worst suburb in samsara, in the desire realm, is called the hell realms, which is mostly occupied. And you could argue that their minds are conjoined with a fire element, and this is a predominance of anger. So, we do not want one of those. We do not want a spirit birth. We do not want an animal birth. We do not want a God realm birth. We do not want a formless birth. We don't want a form birth. So what have we got left? Human. So either you get born as a human or another option, a Pure Land. Excuse me. So what is a Pure Land? Well, for years and years and years, I'd hear about Pure Lands, and then I'd hear about these people who really loved Amitabha's Pure Land. And it seemed always to me, you know, that they were just treating it like another version of heaven. And I had no interest. I was bored by it. I didn't want to know about a boring old Pure Land, you know. And then, interestingly, when I did this book, when I was working on it, you know, the last part of it, I felt, when I did the manuscript, put all the books to put the different sections of the teaching together, because I edited it, very fortunate. Because it forced me to become familiar with all this stuff, you know. So then I remember I felt the book wasn't ready yet, wasn't finished. And then out of the blue, I got an email from Holly, Venerable Holly, who's an Australian nun who's one of Rinpoche's, you know, group of helpers. And this is couple of years after Rinpoche's stroke, and he started to give teachings again. And I remember he gave a teaching in San Jose in California. He gave an empowerment into the practice of Amitabha, and then talked a bit about his Pure Land. And then I got this rough transcript, and I realized that was the chapter missing from this book. I was so happy, you know. It was very moving. And then suddenly it made sense to me why you'd want to be born in a Pure Land, okay? So let's talk about what it is. Well, we have to first understand, and I'm sure I discussed this, I've implied it already, the Vajrayana presentation of how minds and matter, because the world is consisting of minds and matter, right? How they connect. So this is so clear in the Vajrayana model. The 8 stages of death is related to is directly connected to this process. The entire Tibetan medical system is based on this understanding. It's similar to the acupuncture, similar to the Ayurvedic of the Hindu. This view has been around for thousands of years, you know, before the clever modern people came along and thought they invented everything. The philosophical materialists. So according to this view, there are minds, trillions upon trillions upon trillions of minds, mind streams, mental continuums, consciousnesses. And so those minds, and then there is matter. That's it. There is matter. And matter all the physical matter of the universe. This model still, it's ancient. They still use it, no contradiction. It's made up of the 4 elements: earth, air, fire, water. And when you study Buddhist philosophy, and even in the sutra teachings, you learn the detailed description of all these 4 elements, and all the elements have a characteristic of all the other elements. So it's very extensive. This is taught in the, So in the Vajrayana model, as His Holiness says in his wonderful book on the death process, which I highly recommend. I don't know if it's in Russian, but it's edited by Jeffrey Hopkins, and it's called, a newer version of it is called The Mind of Clear Light. And it's a commentary on a text of Panchen Lama. And it's all about the death process. It's a wonderful teaching. So if you can read English, read it. If it's in Russian, even better. The Mind of Clear Light by Dalai Lama, edited and translated by Jeffrey Hopkins, in English, obviously. So there His Holiness says very clear that all minds, all the trillions of minds, all the minds having a hell experience, all the minds having spirit experience, all the minds having animal experience, human experience, God, anti-gods, formless and form, and all the Buddhas, all the beings out of samsara, and all the Buddhas even, all minds, whether enlightened all the way down to hell beings, their minds are inextricably linked to their own set of the 4 elements. This is crucial to understand. This is the way it is, not made it this way. It has been observed to be this. Now, this is the point. We can even understand karma now when we understand this. As Lama Zopa says in the Kala Chakra Tantra, there is this, there are these detailed descriptions of the intimate relationship between internal and external energy. Well, internal is mind, thoughts, feelings, emotions, unconscious, subconscious, instinct, you name it. And matter. And what's that? The 4 elements. So, so the external is matter, the 4 elements, and internal is mind. Well, if that's a subtler, if they're conjoined, so as we describe the death process, gross consciousness, which is our sensory consciousness, inextricably linked with the gross physical body. This one, the eyeball, the tactile, the nerves, the eardrum, that's the physical consciousness, and the mental consciousness, the gross consciousness and the gross body. So that in the death process deconstructs, and by the time you get to the 4th one, you look like you're dead, baby. But you're not dead yet. Then you've got subtle consciousness. Now that's your mental consciousness, all the thousands of thoughts. They are more subtle. We can access them at a grosser level, but they are subtle in their nature. Subtle is a technical term. And they are inextricably, so then, the subtle body, and they're inextricably linked to the subtle body. Well, the subtle body, and this is what we described in the death process, this is all getting to the Pure Lands, it's leading to it, is made of these 72,000 subtle channels, a subtle nervous system from our tip of our head to the tip of our toe, a subtle level throughout this grosser body. And throughout all those 72,000 channels are running all these different wind energies, air energies, prana. I mean, the Tibetan doctors spent 12, 14 years studying all these winds because they're the source of our health, and their job is to balance them. Now, this is the point. All the different states of mind, attachment, anger, jealousy, love, compassion, wisdom, you name it, they're all linked to their own wind energies, and they are inextricably linked to those wind energies going through all these channels throughout our body. Now, obviously, this is not the neuroscientific view. Clearly, this is the Buddhist view, Vajrayana. So, as Lama Zopa says, even when you're just angry in your mind, forget about your words, just your mind. Well, that anger, first of all, obviously, this is me adding, programs your mind with that habit. That's how you keep being more angry, because you're practicing anger, and that habit stays in your mind. So you keep programming your mind with anger. And then that also at the same time, this is the point now, impacts upon your wind energies connected to that anger. So it pollutes it. And this is eventually what ripens as sickness. And even in turn, eventually is what impacts upon the external elements. And then one life you wake up in an environment as a result of anger and killing, let's say, where the environment harms you. Earthquakes, storms, all the imbalance of the weather that we're experiencing all the time, where the elements actually harm you. Who created those elements? You, baby. Now, the elements are there, but your actions, your anger, your compassion, or your love, or your kindness, whatever, they impact upon the internal elements and then eventually on the external elements. The elements just exist. But the way they manifest as harmful, beautiful, ugly is the result of the actions, the mental and then the physical and verbal actions of all the trillions of sentient beings who experience those environments. We are the creators of the entire universe, basically. So if everything we think and do and say, programs our mind, first with karmic imprints, and then the habits, but then impacts upon the elements, then guess what's going to happen if you start practicing Dharma? You start giving up delusion. So not only do you stop the anger tendencies, you depollute your wind energies. So next life, you're going to get born with good health as a result of not killing. 1, you'll get a human body. 2, you won't have a tendency to kill. 3, you won't get killed or die young. And 4, the physical world will make you healthy. It won't harm you. Who created that? You, baby. So what do you think? If you keep practicing and keep practicing and keep practicing, you're going to completely purify your elements. So eventually, and then including the environment, and then when you die and you've got the very powerful karmic connection with the holy beings, let's say, you're going to connect with the Buddhas in a Pure Land. So now let's talk about how you create a Pure Land. Well, let's say you're the Buddha. You're the person who's become a Buddha. Let's say you've become a Buddha now. Let's say you have continued to work on your mind, purify the wind energies, purify the elements, continue to purify. And then you're completely in control of the whole process. And then what happens is this. When you die, you can transform that very subtle mind into the mind of the Buddha. It's called the Dharmakaya. You become the Buddha. Your mind becomes enlightened. Your mind now is completely all pervasive, all blissful, all clear, and pervades the universe. That's the Dharmakaya. Now, what good is that to poor old peanuts like you and me? We need help. And why did you become a Buddha? To help me. Thank you. So you're going to manifest in some bodies, baby. And one of those bodies is the manifestation of subtle mind, and that's called the Sambhogakaya, the enjoyment body. And that's depicted in all the millions of Buddhas in Tantra. Tara, Chenrezig, Yamantaka, you name it. These are visual depictions, representations of different psychological qualities, and the Buddhas manifest in those forms at a subtle level to be of benefit to sentient beings. So the best we can do is visualize them and imagine them. But the Arya Bodhisattvas who can realize emptiness, they can directly contact those beings at that level in their meditation. Now, those Buddhas, like we just don't have a body and then float around in the sky. We have environments. And why? Because there are external elements. So the way the elements manifest in our life, our karmic appearance and what the elements are is dependent on our karma. So by the time you get to being a Buddha, the elements, you manifest these elements. And so what do the elements look like? The environment is this blissful, radiant place, the manifestation of bliss and joy and wisdom, And as you can read all in the book, there's a particular practice Rinpoche really recommends related to Amitabha. It's a prayer from Tsongkhapa, an aspiration to be born in Amitabha's Pure Land. But there's also another prayer in there, which is a description of Amitabha's Pure Land. So of course, when we read it, it sounds like science fiction to us, but this is real. It's the karmic appearance of a Buddha. Everything's radiant and blissful and joyful. Our minds create that in the same way that we create hells. They're karmic appearances. So the Pure Land is the abode of the Buddha. Amitabha is this blissful being, and then he's got his own Pure Land. Now, normally, as Rinpoche says in this chapter about Pure Lands, he says, Tsongkhapa says, we must aspire to be born in Amitabha's Pure Land. He says, most Pure Lands are not available to most beings. We have to realize emptiness or be very highly realized yogis or yoginis. But he says, Amitabha's is the only one that's available to regular people. And he lists the causes very clearly, The causes are to want to go there. The causes are obviously living in pure ethics, living in bodhicitta, and having a motivation to only get born, this is the point, only get born in Amitabha's Pure Land, so you can speed up your enlightenment process. You're going to have a body of light, for God's sake. You have teachings day and night. You don't need toilets and people and sex and drugs and rock and roll and all the other rubbish, which is what we're totally busy with, keeping these big bodies going. You don't need any of that. So you can whiz to enlightenment. And then because of your bodhicitta, you will happily then come back to the human realm and help the rest of us. So now I'm a fan of Amitabha's Pure Land, I promise. I've decided that's where I'm going. And that's the other one. I don't know if I talked about this, but I'll talk about it now because I'm talking about death to another center as well. So I'll get confused with what I say to who. So the thing that really struck me when I edited this book, look, I've been a Buddhist for a few years, okay? I'm trying to think about karma all the time. I apply it in my daily life. I love the view of karma. It's most powerful. But still, even then, still because of this ego grasping, we still have this view, well, if I'm a good girl, I'm sure Lama Zopa will take care of me. If I'm a good girl, I'm sure my guru will take care of me. Well, that's exactly if you're a Christian. I don't complain. Christians are great. They rely on God to send them to heaven. No, it's not Buddha's job. It's my job. So we know in our daily lives, it sounds so silly, but it's really powerful. We know in our daily lives that I'm sure I talked about this. If I want to go to Moscow, I've got to want to go to Moscow. First step, as Lama Zopa says, everything exists on the tip of the wish. I want to go to Moscow. You've got to have that. You don't say, well, maybe I'll go to Moscow. If only I could go to Moscow. I wish I could go to Moscow. I want to go to Moscow. That's the first step. And then you don't just sit there and say that every day. I want to go to Moscow on January the 27th. And then up comes January 27 and you wonder why you're not in Moscow. Well, for God's sake, you didn't create the causes. What are the causes? Buy an air ticket, work out the itinerary, save my money, pack my bag, go to the airport. It's not rocket science. Well, honeys, it's the same here. This sounds so hilarious to us. So now I have decided I want to be reborn when this mind leaves this body in Amitabha's Pure Land. Thank you. I want that. Very clear. And why? I'm trying to be like Lama Zopa and have bodhicitta and think I'll get enlightened quickly because I love quick. Quick for me is the best. If I get enlightened quickly, I'll be so excited. And because I'm bossy, I will love to come back to the human realms and boss everybody around and drag you to enlightenment. That will give me great pleasure. I know when I used to hear about thinking about being a Buddha, and I think, I've got to be humble, I've got to be quiet, I've got to be sort of invisible. I thought, no, I do not want that kind of Buddha. I want to be the biggest, fattest, loudest Buddha. So I feel a lot better thinking that. So now I'm ready. So what do I do every night? I hit the pillow. I turn on my own iPad with my voice, singing the prayer, chanting the prayer in English of wanting to go to Amitabha's Pure Land, programming my mind with it. Or I alternate with the King of Prayers because they say guaranteed. If you recite the King of Prayers every day, you'll be born in Amitabha's Pure Land. So I alternate each night. Now, the only other option, think of it as practical. The only other option is human body. Nothing wrong because you do the same reason. I want to be born in a Buddhist family to continue practicing Buddhism so I can benefit sentient beings, so I become a Buddha, blah, 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 That's fine too. But I figured one Amitabha's. Now, if I miss the plane to Amitabha's Pure Land, let's hope I get the plane to the human birth. And if I miss that, well, I'm sorry, I'm in trouble. You better pray for me, okay? So for me, it really became clear that we're in charge of this in the same way that if I want to go to Moscow, I then create the causes. So obviously, if I want to go to Amitabha's Pure Land, it's not enough just to say that. I've got to create the causes. So what are they? Well, Lama Zopa lists them. He said he forgot a couple. I think it was soon after his stroke and he couldn't even talk very well. So I think it was exhausting for him. So kind to even teach. He's kind of ran out of words, he thinks. So one of them is I want to go to Amitabha's Pure Land. But two, what's the cause? Morality, ethics, perfect ethics. Then bodhicitta. And then even more practical, this sounds hilarious. You've got to think about the wonderful qualities of it. And so that's why there's a verse in there, there's a text in there that Rinpoche had translated, telling you all the beautiful qualities of Amitabha's Pure Land. I've got to think about the qualities of Moscow. Why do I want to go to Moscow? If I think it's some kind of hell realm, I wouldn't want to go there. I've got to think of how nice it is and how good the people are and how exciting it is. And I can't wait. So you get excited. You want to go to Moscow. Same here. I want to go to Amitabha's Pure Land. Why? So I can get enlightened quickly. So I can get bodhicitta. So I can come back to the human body and help others. And they can do multitudes of bodies then. So you can have great fun. And it has to be based on, and has to be thinking of how delicious it would be there, how easy it would be to get enlightened there. It's logical. This is exactly what I do if I want to go to Moscow. There's no difference. So don't put it in another category. Holy in the sky, cross your fingers. This is how we tend to think, So that's that. Any questions?
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself.
Okay, darling. Sure. Okay, good, Katja.
Yeah. Hello, Ven.Robina. There are a few questions in the chat. I think you have answered all the questions from the previous session.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So the first question is, I read in the book of Lama Zopa we are talking about that we should chase away the cats from the room where the dead body is. Could you explain, please?
Okay, well, not only chase away the cats, not so much that, but more don't have animals in general, don't have animals, especially pets in general, in the room with the dying person. And the logical reason is very simple there. It's that when we're very attached to our pets, you think about it all the time. You want to be near them. You want to stroke them. We confuse that with love. There is love there, but there's a lot of attachment. So if you have too many attachment objects around the person, their beloved children, their money, their possessions, their animals, they can't let go. They're going to be full of attachment and fear of losing. So it's a very practical reason to keep them out of the room in general. But the specific one with cats, which I mentions in passing in the book, and the person who read this must have read these words, it says it, is that the cats have got particular kind of, they're kind of connected with spirits. So it could attract spirits. It could attract heavy, harmful spirits. And there's something very polluted. I mean, in general, being around animals, not trying to be mean about animals, but their energy is quite heavy and diluted. So then their energy is quite polluted. And you need, when you're dying, you need very things to uplift you, to be more subtle, to be more light. You need to be surrounded by the Buddhas and the idea of the Bodhisattvas and the holy beings. So it's because it can attract spirits and it can be harmful to the person who's dying. That's the answer. It's in Rinpoche's book, though. The person would have read it. What else?
Sorry, there is a problem with the microphone. Anyway, the next question is, our Vajra sister is in a hospital now with a very serious condition, very aggressive brain cancer. Yes, so she has very severe pain. What practice can she do now before dying?
Is she a Dharma practitioner, did you say? I don't remember.
I don't know. It wasn't said in the question.
There's not much a person can do when they're like that. Just say the story again.
It seems so, because she's a Vajra sister.
Oh, okay, so tell me again the words. Say the words exactly.
Oh, yeah. So this, do you want me to repeat the question?
Yes.
So she's in a very bad, serious condition with very aggressive brain cancer. So she has a very severe pain. What practice can she do now?
Well, if you say she's your Vajra sister, there's so much more to talk about, But if she's your Vajra sister, this is exactly every word we're talking about here. You have to know her mind well. You have to know where she is at. You have to know her practices. You have to know who her guru is. So you have to, if you can be with her, and you haven't answered that, and if you want to talk to me directly or say more, because you have to do as much as you can to help her be peaceful. You need to say prayers to her. You need to talk about her guru to her. You need to tell her guru who loves her, all of these things. So she has to hear these words because she's so involved in the pain now. She has no space to think of anything else. So she's got to hear these words from you and feel your love and your calm mind so she can have the courage. Even hearing those things will help her a little bit. I mean, of course, you give her as much drugs as you can, but try not to make her completely unconscious. It's best to be conscious. Of course, the pain must be terrible, but you can't expect her to do too much. It's too much when you're in pain. Even when you have a small headache, you can't think of anything else. It's your job to do that. If you can, but you haven't told me whether you can do this, you see. Don't just expect her to do a practice. It's too much. That's the trouble. That's why we're so necessary at the time of death to hold their hands metaphorically and to help her navigate this. She's got to hear mantra, hear the sound of the prayers, hear her own guru, how her guru loves her, all of these things. This is what you can do for her, which is so precious, if you can be with her. It's so important. This is trying to understand the point. What she can do, she can do. But if you're in such pain, we know you can't do much. You can't do much, I hope that helps. If you want to ask more, please ask more.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the next question is, when somebody becomes Buddha, what happens to the...
I have to answer this. I've got to stop my phone. I'm so sorry. Let me just stop my phone. Forgive me. Okay, I'm here. What did you say now? Ask again.
Okay, so The next question is, when somebody becomes Buddha, what happens to the subtlest drop that contains
The what?
What happens to the subtlest drop that contains the subtlest consciousness?
When you die, what was the first part of the question?
When somebody becomes Buddha.
Yeah, but whether you become Buddha or not, that's not the question. It's everybody when they die, the subtle drop. When the subtle drop opens, the subtle consciousness leaves the body, and then the drop goes out of the body. It goes out the nostril and out the sex organ. It disappears. It goes down the toilet. The drop's finished.
So yeah, so that was the question about.
I know, but maybe that wasn't quite their question. They've got to think about that and see if they have another question. Go on, next.
So the next question is, if I am in a formless realm, how can I help living beings? Will I be able to?
You can't. You're useless. You're in subtle concentration. You are useless. That's why it's a useless rebirth to get. It's a complete ridiculous rebirth to get. You can't do anything. Very simple. You can't do anything in the God realms as well. Maybe some gods, like they call devas, maybe they can be a bit helpful to some humans, but mostly they're so attracted to their own bliss they can't think about anybody else. That's why humans at the moment is the best. And then as a bodhisattva, you be reborn and reborn and reborn as in bodies to help others, or you can be reborn in a pure land to help others. The formless realm, the form realm, the God realms are useless. They're wasting time. You can't do anything. Go
on. So next question is, it sounds like the Pure Land is like a school for somebody who wants to reach enlightenment, but can we do it?
Yeah.
Yes. Can we do it quicker in our human body or not?
No, of course not. Think about it. You got to go to the toilet. You got to have sex and food and drugs and people and houses and keep them clean and go shopping and drive cars. Look at the amount of junk we need just to survive in a Buddhist human body. I mean, it's a miracle in a human body that we do any practice. If you're like the yogis, like Geshe Lama Kontrog, who's given up sex, drugs, and rock and roll, is gone up into the mountains, naked, living in Vajrayogini's Pure Land 24 hours a day, meditating unceasingly, and doesn't need food, sleep, or anything else because he's such a highly evolved being. If you're like him, sure, be born a human. Come on. And in the Pure Land, you can be 24 hours a day getting enlightened because you've got nothing else to think about. It's a practical issue. Next.
Okay, the next question is about computer games. If somebody plays computer game and kill negative heroes in the game, does it create a negative karma?
I understand. Of course you do. Everything we do is like this. Okay. I mean, I've got a friend who sometimes he's been doing it for 25 years. He's a very bright fellow. He's an IT guy, and he's addicted to video games. 25. He's like being a junkie. He's like he's attached to sex. He has to watch porn all day. He's like attached to cigarettes. He's got to smoke all day. He's got attached to food. He's got to eat all day. Well, here's his video games. 6, 8, 9 hours every single day for the last 25 years. He manages, then he cuts it down for a while, then his addiction comes back. And like all attachments, we know it's hard to stop attachment. But with video games, I mean, with food, you just get fat and you kill yourself. With video games, because it's conceptual and there's all these vivid imaginations and vivid visualizations, basically you're doing a very vivid meditation on all these kind of these conceptual stories. It can be very powerful for the mind, very negative for the mind, even just reading novels. Because your mind, the attachment mind gets carried away and gets excited and all involved in these ridiculous stories that we make up. Of course, it destroys our minds. Don't misunderstand it. It's not being fundamentalist. But in our culture, we don't understand the power of the mind. We don't understand. If by watching video games, you can think of virtue and goodness, then you're fine. I mean, I remember, it's very interesting. I remember years ago when I was living in Kopan Monastery in the 70s and 80s. And on Saturdays, all the monks would have a day off. And they'd watch videos. So they all watched Indian movies. They love these Indian movies, you know, and especially when it's kind of action movies. They all sat there cheering and getting excited watching their movies. Anyway, for them, I could see with them, it wasn't disturbing their minds. They weren't, you know, so elaborate, but that was all about goodness and badness. And they cheered for the friends and they booed when the enemies, you know, won and that kind of thing. So it's not too bad. It didn't destroy their minds, although it could be agitating. So if you go to movies all day, forget video games, you know, and you watch, I mean, it's up to you. I can't stand movies. I like thrillers. I like James Bond. I mean, I'm not being ridiculous. I love action movies. It does not disturb my mind. I think of it a different way. You know, each one's different. Of course, if I was sitting down to meditate, I could not watch the movies because your mind gets crazy. Everything makes your mind crazy. Now, if you're doing video games, it's very competitive, which is part of the skill of video games. I understand that. You die to go to the next one to get more points. It's very competitive. But the character of those thoughts, some are really brutal, some are shocking. So broadly, it's attachment. Of course it is. But the specifics of it, that depends. So it depends on the video games. If it's all about virtue and goodness, then please, it's okay, but you still get attached to it, which is no use. So we've got to understand the way the mind works, and we don't in our culture. The Buddha's view is everything you think and do and say programs you. So then check what you're programming your mind with. There's the competitive aspect, there's the attachment aspect, and then there's the content. There's different things, So you've got to look at it carefully. Go on.
There are a few addition to the previous questions.
Yeah, good.
First, there are two questions about Pure Land. The first question is it a form realm? Because
no,
there are
it is not in samsara. It is not in samsara. It is the pure land of a Buddha, which is not in samsara, by definition.
Mm-hmm. And another question about Pure Land is, what is the difference between God realm and Pure Land? God realm is samsara.
You're caught up in, as a result of virtue, naturally, as a result of being a good person, you'll have either a human body or a God realm, and you're in enormous bliss. So you could argue the experiences are a bit similar, but there's immense attachment, and there's no wisdom, and there's no dharma, and there's no thinking, and there's no understanding of what you're doing, and there's no wish to become enlightened. You're just you've got acres and acres of delicious veggies and delicious veggies and flowers, and you forget that you grew them in a past life, and you just eat them all up. That's a God realm. So they eat them all up and there's nothing left, and then they die and they go back to the lower realms because they're not creating any more virtue. There's no new virtue being created. They're just eating up their past virtue. So, there's no awareness of that. But in the Pure Land, you're completely conscious. You know exactly why you're there, what you're doing, and you're getting teachings, and you're driven by the wish to be a Buddha. It's completely different mentally, completely different. The bliss, you could argue, would be a little bit similar, but the reason you're there and what you want there and what you do every day there is completely different. You're totally focused on hearing the teaching so you can become a Buddha as quickly as possible. That never arises in your mind in the form realm. That never arises in your mind in the God realms. This is the point. Next.
There is addition to this question about this Vajra sister with brain cancer.
Yes, good.
So the question is, maybe you could give advice. What exactly could she practice? Like maybe some example of practice.
Sweetheart, if she's a Vajra sister, that implies unless you're misunderstanding, you've got to explain to me. A Vajra sister is a person whom you've taken initiations from the same Lama from. That implies she's got empowerments. That implies she's got commitments. So you should know her own practices, not give me to give another practice. You should know her practices, sweetheart. You should know where she's at in her practice. If she's got commitments and practices, you can recite her practices to her. Don't ask her to do them if she's in such pain. She can hear them, but you've got to help her. Why don't you talk to me directly, please? This is not helpful. Please do speak to me directly. I have to ask you questions. And if you've got Lama Zopa's book, you must read it. It's so important. It won't take you long to read. It's so helpful. But let me speak to you. Can you please come and speak to me? It's really important, sweetheart, what you're asking.
I think it was an anonymous question. I don't know who asked it.
Well, if you are there, it's so helpful to me and to everybody and to you if you can speak to me, even anonymously, please. Then I can answer your questions. Or I have to ask you questions. Because my point is, if you say she's a Vajra sister, that implies she's got empowerments. Now, if you just think she's a friend and a sister, but she has no practices, that's different. So, but I have to know how to answer. I cannot answer until you clarify that point, please. And I want to help you, please. But if you've got Rinpoche's book, it won't take you long to look. Is it free or do people pay for it, Anastasia?
Yes, this book could be bought on our website.
Okay, so then please give the website to this person immediately and tell them how to get the book, because it won't take you long. If you're a Dharma student, it won't take you long to read, sweetheart, I promise you, and you'll know exactly how to help your loved one. I'm not trying to not answer you. I want to answer you, but this book is just all there. It's all so helpful. It's got all the advice there, sweetheart. And you'll look in the contents and see the chapter that relates to you.
Oh, okay. So there is a additional explanation that this person is in a different country, so she can't be near her.
Okay, then I have to keep asking questions. Is she a Dharma practitioner? Does she have a practice? Does she have initiations? Does she have a guru? You said Vajra sister. Does she have people helping her? I've got to ask you all these questions. I can't just answer simply. I'm really sorry. If you could talk to me, it would be so helpful. And if not, you email me.
I'm trying to ask her to turn on her mic, but she's not turning on the mic.
Okay.
So
Well, then she's answering in the text,
если
right?
если вы можете включить, пожалуйста, микрофон. Шпонглизейшн, вот так вы называетесь. Я прошу вас включить микрофон, вам нужно просто его включить.
I really want to help you, sweetheart, and it's good for everybody to hear this discussion. So let's just talk. If you don't want to, then you must email me, translate in Google, and I will answer you immediately. But please get this book. Download from the website.
She said that she can't really, she can't turn on the sound.
Okay.
And
okay.
It seems like she just okay, that doesn't work.
Okay. She can ask me, would you like to email me today and get the book from Anastasia, and then I can answer your question specifically? Because it's a perfect question. If you could email me, just translate in Google and we can talk. I can help you very quickly. But generally speaking, you say she's a Vajra sister and she's not in another country, and she's in another country, then to say you're going to tell her to do a certain practice, I just can't answer that. It's way more specific. I've got to know what her practice is. I've got to know, does she have friends supporting her? I've got to know who her guru is. Then I can be specific. It's like medicine. You can't just tell me she's got a pain, tell me some medicine. You've got to be more precise, sweetheart. I want to help you. What does she say now?
She said that she asking where the address, email address where she can write her email.
Give my email address, my full name, Robina Courtin, my full name, at Mac, like the computer, at mac.com, like the computer, Mac. Robina Courtin at mac.com. You email me today, sweetheart. Do it in Russian if you like, and I'll translate it in Google. We'll talk. Happy to help you. Want to help you. Robina Courtin, all one word, at mac.com. Is that clear? And Anastasia can explain in the chat how to get the book. Okay? Good. I'm happy to help you. Happy to help you. Okay, next question.
Another two questions about Pure Land.
Yeah.
Is it, I heard the point of view that when we are in a human body, it's easier to develop compassion and renunciation. And the human body is the best for the practice of Tantra. Is it not true?
That's true. But this doesn't mean, it's a practical issue. First of all, most Pure Lands are not available to ordinary people, so forget about that. The only one that's useful, Tsongkhapa says it, is Amitabha's Pure Land. As Rinpoche points out really clearly, the advantage, they have different discussions, these lamas, but as Rinpoche says, quoting his own root guru, Trijang Rinpoche, it's very simple that in Amitabha's Pure Land, which is available to people who have got delusions, like you and me, if you're a yogini, if you're highly evolved, then you can go to the others as well. But if you choose to go to this one, ordinary people, the simple point is, based upon bodhicitta, you go there only to get the teachings quickly. It's simply it's a quick path. That's it. It's very simple. The goal is the same. And after you've got enlightened, you can then come to the human body as a Buddha to benefit sentient beings. It's practical. So of course, it's obviously to do with the karma. What you've got might be better for you next life. It might be better for you to get born to that particular mother, do that particular practice to connect with those particular people. But anyway, remember, as you get more advanced, and even the lowest level bodhisattvas, whether you in a Pure Land getting those realizations, you are able to manifest your mind in at least 100 different forms simultaneously, once you've realized emptiness, once you've become an Arya bodhisattva. So it's all a question of what's right for each person. Not everybody likes Russia. They prefer to go to Italy. The reason you go there, it's correct. The human body is perfect for Tantra. But honey, who's qualified? 99% of us aren't qualified to actually get the results from tantric practice. It's highly sophisticated. So it's up to what the karma of the person. That's all. I'm not trying to say you must go anywhere. Decide. And if you're not sure, just think, may I get born in whatever most beneficial form, you know? If you're not sure what you want, decide. But the reason for either one is so you can keep practicing, so you can become a Buddha, so you can help others. That's the bottom line, you know? That's the motivation that determines it. That's the key thing. What else?
Another two questions about Pure Land. The first question is, does it really exist, or is it just a play of our mind?
I'm not laughing at you, but this is how we think of religion. If you actually think that I'm daring to sit here telling something that literally doesn't exist, you should lock me up in an insane asylum immediately. All right, that's all I can tell you.
So
I don't know if that helped you, but you know, if you want more questions, you please ask me. Honey, this is not based on neuroscientific view of the mind being the brain. Obviously, if you posit the mind is the brain, every word I'm saying here is superstition and science fiction and can't exist. So, and that's what we think of as religion. That's why, who was it? Marx or Lenin said it's the opium of the people, or whoever said that one. Yeah, believing blindly in something that doesn't exist. And I'm not discussing that, you know, I'm not saying what Christians think doesn't exist. I'm not saying that. But if you believe blindly that something does exist that doesn't, then you are seriously in trouble. So we've got to check up what exists, don't we? That's our job. And the first thing you can do is take it as your hypothesis. I'm not clairvoyant yet. I cannot tell you with certainty that I've experienced the God realm, but I'm basing these experiences, every word I'm telling you is based on what I've learned with my teachers who are based on the teachings of the Buddha. And every word the Buddha said is coming from his own direct experience. So it's my working hypothesis. And if one day I come along and I eventually get to a point where I can prove that the Pure Lands don't exist, I'll say, thank you, Buddha, goodbye, I'm out of here. But so far, so good. These are my working hypotheses. There's no other way to approach it. Next.
When we are in a Pure Land, can we remember about our loved ones that we left in samsara, and can we help them from there?
Well, you've had countless past lives. You wouldn't be so narrow-minded as to worry about the ones you just left behind. You'll think of all sentient beings. You're way beyond just worrying about your loved ones. You know, you'd have infinite compassion for infinite beings. You'd be pretty powerful. And that's the only reason you're existing, is to become a Buddha so you can benefit all of them. That's what drives you. Of course you could. Of course you would. But not just them, everybody. Because they've all been your loved ones countless times in countless lifetimes. Go on, what's next?
The next question. I would like to study Buddhism and meditation in a more intense way. Can you please recommend which European centers would be a good place to start?
I mean, now these days with Zoom, you can study anywhere on the planet, can't you? It depends. First of all, it depends on your language. There are some really, I mean, can you tell me that? What's your language? Where do you live?
It was in English, so I think could be some.
And they can answer me. Answer me where you live and what your language is, and I can then help you. Go on, next. I'd love to help you. Just let me know that, whoever you are, and I'm happy to help you. Go on, tell me, Katja, next one.
So next one. Would a Christian who believes in heaven and thinks about it when he or she is dying end up in the God realm because...
No, that's a very interesting point. It's a very interesting point. It's a very interesting point, and we have to understand karma to understand this one. So, you know, how we experience, what we see out there is labeled by us, depending on our views. So if you have the view of, you know, so I'll tell you a story. I saw this years ago online, many years ago in the 90s. And there was this American doctor who interviewed his different patients who'd had near-death experiences, and they weren't kind of white light experiences, they were hell-like experiences. It was very fascinating. And one of them, his experience was this. He was in the hospital waiting for his operation for his heart, and his wife was next to him on the bed, and suddenly he found himself standing next to his wife, and she didn't answer him, and he got annoyed with her. And then he looked at the bed, and he kind of realized his body was in the bed. He saw his own body. So anyway, the point is, that's your subtle mind, okay? That's your subtle mind. And your subtle mind can't actually leave the body. It's just it's the way you're experiencing it. It's like a dream, but it's your subtle body. So anyway, he was very anxious about his operation. Then he heard this voice out in the corridor saying, come on, John, come on, come on. So he thought, oh, good, I'm going for my operation. So he went outside and then started walking on the corridor. And there's various points about this that are most fascinating. He started walking on the corridor with this person, and this person was so nice and loving and kind to him. And then gradually, as he kept walking on this corridor, this person became brutal and mean and vicious and violent and ripping his flesh and abusing him. And it was the most, he said, it was the worst experience of my life, you know. But what interesting point before we go further, and I find this very fascinating, he said the experience, the walking along that corridor took as long as walking from here to Alaska. Now, even if it was in the state next to Alaska, what he meant was it took a long, 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 long time. Now, you probably think about it. It was probably like 5 seconds that he had that experience. So I find it already fascinating that our concept of time is how we measure it. It's a human one. It's human. It's so clear. It's fascinating. So that was one part. But then he said he was just totally devastated, and they left him. This person left him, and he didn't know what to do. And he said the darkness and despair was unbearable, and he didn't know what to do. So he said he had never prayed since he was a little boy. He'd been brought up a Christian, but then he thought, I'd better start praying. So he started, Our Father who art in heaven, and he couldn't go any further. And then he tried, the Lord is my shepherd, and he couldn't go any further. So then he just shouted out, Jesus, help me. And then from way over in the distance, a tiny light came, and it got stronger and more powerful and more radiant and more blissful, and it healed his body, healed him, made him blissful, and completely encompassed him. And as far as he was concerned, he called that light Jesus. Now, I think if you were a Buddhist and you thought, Buddha, help me, that you would call it Buddha. Whatever appears out there, and this is the meaning of emptiness, it appears according to our concepts. Of course, you'd think it's Jesus. But if you're a Buddhist, you know, you wouldn't, if you're a Buddhist, you'd see Buddha image. You'd see some kind of image that you'd call Buddha. It depends on your karma, of how you conceptualize things, how you label things. So, you know, your mummy, she's a Christian, she loves God and loves Jesus. The more she visualizes that, the more she realizes that she could be literally born in a God realm, which is where she will see what she calls Jesus. You create the cause. We create where we go. No one puts it on top of us. But depending on her mind, she might get born as a human being. She might. Depends on her karma, you know. But it'll certainly be positive. What's next?
So there is explanation about where to study. So the question was about Germany, and another question is the languages are French, English, Russian, Latvian. So
like, for this person,
anything.
Well, these days, I mean, 2 people.
One is from Germany and another is from Latvia. I don't know.
2 people asking the same question, wanting to know where to study next. Well, listen, both of you, sweethearts, listen. There's so much available on Zoom now. This is what's an incredible time, you know. I mean, for example, here in Santa Fe, in New Mexico, in America, I'm here and there's a center here, and they have classes 3, 4, 5 times a day. They have morning meditations, evening meditations. They have different classes at different levels. They're always in English, but they are trying now to get more translators. So our center in Florida, when they, like the teaching I gave last Sunday, they have Spanish, Portuguese, and French and Italian translation. Another center, very many places are having that, you know, so it's so helpful. So if you speak English, you can go to any one, but this particular center, I'm not trying to sell them, but they have teachings all day, you know, several classes every single day. And you can check if you, and I teach many of those, but if you look on their website, or even if you look on my website, you'll see my calendar, you'll see their name. It's the center in Santa Fe. So that's one example. But this Russian center has teachings. They have also English, look, English and other languages. The Brazilian center has teachings, French centers, so many. So if you go into fpmt.org, which this center is part of, you're going to see the centers in different countries. There is a center in Germany, but these days you don't need to be in the same country. This is what's so amazing about internet at the moment with the pandemic happening. It opens up teachings to the whole world. You know, there's no one website, unfortunately, where you can see them all. But if you research the different centers, but if you start with this center in America, and you start with this center here in Moscow, you can't go wrong. You're going to find, and you'll find your way, you'll navigate, you'll find so many other teachings. There's so much available these days. And, and that's why in our center now we've started 7 o'clock in the morning meditations, 5 mornings a week, just 30 minutes. We call it express meditation, guided little meditations. That's 7 o'clock for the Americans, of course, for us in New Mexico. Then we've got 9 p.m. purification meditation. But I'm sure some other European centers do this as well. And it's working so well. So start researching, just start looking, start looking. Check with my schedule first. That'll start you. And you can see that I teach in the Swiss center has got courses, the Russian center, the French center, the Italian centers, the Spanish centers, the American ones, the Australian ones. So you can see if you look at my calendar, because I'm one of the FPMT people, you can see different centers from there, and then you can see their programs. So just do your research. And if you want to ask questions, then ask Anastasia. If you want to ask me, you email me, okay? I'm happy to help. Happy to help. What else?
So the next question is about this drop, subtlest consciousness.
Yep.
So there is an addition to this question. So the subtlest consciousness is something that is get reborn, that get new rebirth. And if somebody gets enlightened, so there is not going to be a new rebirth. So what happens to indestructible drop then?
No, still the indestructible drop is not the issue. The indestructible drop is physical matter. The very subtle consciousness or the clear light consciousness is the mind. The mind never ends. The mind can only continue. But the very subtle drop is what you get in this. Let's say you die, you're called Fred. And in this life, you went to Fred's mummy's womb. And what your mind joined at the time of conception was the very subtle red and white drops from your mummy and daddy. And they then stay in your heart chakra throughout the entire life. And then when you die, the red one goes out the nostril and the white one goes down the toilet. That's it. Repeat the question. Whether you're a Buddha or a dog, same thing happens. But if you're a dog or a Buddha, your consciousness will continue. Now, if you become a Buddha, then already you've been a bodhisattva for many lifetimes, and you're not just sitting there twiddling your thumbs in the sky. Even the lowest level bodhisattva, driven by their incredible compassion, there are 10 stages of bodhisattva path. Already you're able to manifest in countless bodies. You're manifesting spontaneously as dogs and this and that and physical things and realms of existence to continually benefit sentient beings. So when you finally become a Buddha, now you're perfectly enlightened and you continue to spontaneously manifest in millions of bodies. That's your job, baby. So the drops are physical. The mind is not physical. The drops are physical and they came from your mummy and daddy. So when your mind leaves those drops, if you're a dog, or whether your mind leaves those drops and you become a Buddha, they both go down the toilet. Your mind continues. Not the drops. The drops are from your previous mummy and daddy and they go. That's the last shred of your physical body of this life. Then all the body of this life has gone. I hope that's clear. What's next?
The next question. Last time you said that you will say more about the question of what does it matter which way the body was buried. Can you say more about it?
I don't understand the question.
So last time you said that you will say more about does it matter how body was buried?
You mean how the body is got rid of?
Yeah, yeah.
Bury is one and burning isn't. There's two options.
No, not burn, buried. Yeah.
Well, what do you mean by more than one option? I've got no idea about that. I don't know. Understand the question. Buried is buried. I don't know what else to say about buried. Maybe I misunderstood your question. I'm so sorry. So maybe ask me another question then to get it clear for me because I'm not clear.
Yeah, okay. So that was said.
I know, I don't understand. I must have misled you. So please ask the question in a different way.
Yeah. So, okay. How can we help people who killed themselves, especially if they were Vajrayana practitioners?
Of course, it's very sad, isn't it? I mean, the broader issue is how do you help anybody who's died? I mean, most people die with negativity. Most people will go to the lower realms. This is very depressing to hear, but it's logical if we understand this process because you've got to die with awareness. You got to die with virtue. You've got to die very conscious. You've got to want to be born as a human. You've got to want to born in a pure land. You've got to be very aware and you've got to be involved in this process. So if there you are, depression and despair, and you kill yourself, I mean, that of course it's going to be a lower realm suffering, but most people will go to lower realms. So how do we help all of them? But if a Vajrayana practitioner, this is so tragic. It's so sad, but we can't say exactly where they're reborn. We've got no idea. But all we can do is do practices for them. And if they've got a teacher, obviously if they're Vajrayana, we've got a teacher and teachers, we must ask those teachers. We must get special prayers done for them. Many, as much as we can. I mean, in this book, there's so many practices. You can do, you can try to do, that you can bless their remains. This practice called Jangwa. This is one of the practices to do after the mind has left the body. And Rinpoche really praises this practice. So when the mind leaves the body, you're going to then have the cremation or the burial. The key thing is you keep some of the ashes and you keep some of the body, like the hair or the nails. And one really powerful practice for being, even if they have gone to the lower realms, you get the special practice called Jangwa done by qualified lamas. You've got to find out who does that. Probably in Russia, one of the geshis does it. You get the ashes blessed. And this is so precious, Rinpoche says. It really blesses their ashes and makes it like a relic. And also hugely can help purify their negative karma. If a person died recently, that's one of the first things you can do, as well as have other practices. And Rinpoche mentions all this in the book. There's so many. Get pujas done for them, get practices done as much as you can, There's so many things you can do. Rinpoche lists it all in the book. Go
on. This question is in English. Pure land should be in samsara because sentient beings can't leave samsara until liberation state of arhat or higher bhumis.
It sounds like good logic. It sounds perfect logic. I'm only quoting what Lama Zopa says, quoting Trijang Rinpoche, quoting Tsongkhapa, quoting the Buddha. I can only pass that on. Most pure lands, yes, necessarily, you can't experience them because your mind is not advanced enough. But this is what they say in the teachings. I can only quote the teachings. I cannot tell you more. I'm very sorry. But I can definitely say you must need exceptional merit to be able to do this. You must, it's clear. But again, I'm quoting Lama Zopa, quoting his own guru, quoting Tsongkhapa, and quoting the Tantric teachings, and quoting the Amitabha Sutra itself. But what you say sounds correct. I agree with you. But I can't say more. Go on.
Next question. If God can't create the world,
what?
If God can't create the world, how come Amitabha Buddha could create his own world, the Pure Land?
Well, that's the key to the question. We all create our own land. Ha! Perfect statement. Due to our actions, we create our hell, and we create our enlightenment, and we create our Amitabha Pure Land if we are Amitabha. That's the whole point. The point about the creator is a person who's out there who can create all of this and create us and put us in it. Buddha says this is not viable. He gives extensive teachings on how this is not logical or viable. He's not trying to be rude. He's not trying to be a communist. It's the crucial point at which Buddha diverged from the Hindu view, which is the view of ego grasping, the view of ignorance that states this possibility. So there's huge arguments. But the other point is this. This is the way to say it. It's very fascinating. The Christians say that God, let's say, made a rock, made a dog. This is an interesting example. I'll give you a story. That God makes a dog. And then the dog made by God, the dog is a dog. It's a deluded being. It doesn't have a soul. It does, and it won't go to heaven or hell. It's made by God, and it's a dog, and it'll be a real dog with a real dog's mind. Will act like a dog, and pee like a dog, and die like a dog. Now, the Buddhist view, and let me tell you this story. And now I'll tell you the story. Let me tell you the story, then I'll finish. This is how Buddhas work. The Buddhas, even the lowest level bodhisattva, like I said before, well before you're a Buddha, you already have the power to manipulate your own physical four elements based upon your own powerful mind, and you can manifest yourself as a dog out there. But it will never, ever, 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 ever be a real dog. It will look like a dog, but it will be only the manifestation of your mind. It could never be a regular dog. It's just your mind pretending to be a dog for the sake of sentient beings. That's the big difference. So that's why I remember having these discussions with my Jesuit priest friend. And it seemed to me, I said to him that this concept that God made us in his image, but then we got naughty and committed sins, and we went away from God. We became ordinary. But this is the Buddhist point. that dog that the Buddha can manifest his mind as, or even a bodhisattva, it's not possible for it to become ordinary. It's simply the Buddha's mind pretending to be a dog. It can never it can never split off from the Buddha's mind and become ordinary. That's schizophrenic. It is always the Buddha. That dog is the Buddha, but it looks like a dog, smells like a dog, it will kick you like a dog, it will die like a dog. So there's this lovely story. That's the big difference, I'd say. It's the interpretation of this. I'd suggest it's interpretation. So this story about His Holiness the Dalai Lama, everybody knows he's said to be a Buddha. How do I know? I mean, I'm not clairvoyant. I can't say. I can like him. But all the holy beings in Tibet, all the Tibetan holy beings, all the Tibetan realized beings say that they say he's a Buddha, so that I'm prepared to take that as my hypothesis. So this wonderful story that Lama Zopa told many years ago about when the Tibetans had come out of exile, into exile in India. And of course, it was in the early 1960s. And they were the main concern for them was to keep the lineages of all their practice and all their teachings alive, which means real living beings, knowledge holders, the great lamas. They, before they died off, they wanted to create monasteries so they could carry on the lineages and keep the whole lineage alive. It's got to be it's got to be an unbroken lineage of real knowledge holders. This is so important, not just dead knowledge in a book. So they were really working so hard, negotiating with the Indian government to get land where they could start their monasteries. So the Indian government so kindly, incredibly kind, the Indians, offered hundreds of thousands of forest land down in the south of India to the Tibetan government so they could start building their monasteries. And that's what they did. And now we know all the monasteries down south near, from Bangalore, 5 hours from Bangalore, it's like little Tibet. Hundreds of monasteries, hundreds of thousands of Tibetans now. It's like little Tibet down there. Amazing. So anyway, there's this difficult time when they were negotiating with the Indian government. And His Holiness at some point in Dharamsala, where the exiled government was, sent one of his ministers down to Delhi. Well, you've got to go down 5 hours in a bus, then you have to, or a taxi, then you take a train at Patankot, then you travel 12 hours in the train and you get down to the plains and you get to Delhi. And that's where the Indian government is. So this particular Tibetan minister found it very difficult to get a meeting with the appropriate Indian minister, Indian bureaucracy being the way it was. And he gave up, all frustrated, and he went back up to Dharamsala, and then he told His Holiness he couldn't get a meeting, and His Holiness said, it'll be fine, you go right back down now. So he went back down in the train. And in that particular day, the Indian minister's little boy was in the office with his daddy. And the little boy was talking to the Tibetan minister while he was waiting for his meeting with his daddy. And he said he really wanted a dog. Well, the Tibetan was very happy to do something to make everyone happy, So he could grease the wheels. Do you understand that, Diana? Grease the wheels. You know that statement? Something like that? Yes? Okay, good. So he went out and he saw this sadhu, this holy being, Indian yogi, and he had a little dog. So the Tibetan said, can I buy your dog? So he said, sure. So he bought the dog and he came into the office. He gave the dog to the little boy. He was so happy. He ran to his daddy. Then the daddy was happy. Everybody was happy. And so then they had the meeting and everything worked. Well, as Lama Zopa said, the dog and the sadhu were manifestations of the Dalai Lama's mind. Now, if the Dalai Lama is who he says if who they say he is a Buddha, then excuse me, we see a nice Tibetan fellow, don't we? Nice, pleasant Tibetan monk, 85 years old. But if he is a Buddha, and this is why you've got to study the Bodhisattva teachings. If you don't study the Bodhisattva's teachings, it sounds like superstition. As I said, even the lowest level Bodhisattva, and there are 10 stages. The lowest level can manifest already to have the power over their own mind and over the external universe because of this intimate relationship between the internal and external energies, remember, as they talk in Tantra, that they're able to manifest at least 100 different bodies simultaneously. Now, Christians call that creating somebody. So the Dalai Lama, it looked like he created a dog. It looked like that he created a sadhu, and the sadhu would be a sadhu and the dog would be a dog. No. They are manifestations of his own mind. He had the power, and this is what Buddhas are doing every second of the day. If the Dalai Lama is a Buddha, he at this moment is manifesting in countless bodies throughout countless universes for countless sentient beings and will continue to do that as long as time exists. That's a Buddha. I mean, it sounds a bit crazy, I understand, but I'm just quoting the teachings, babies. So the Dalai Lama looks like he's one nice fellow. He's just one manifestation of that mind. So he manifested himself. That means that sadhu didn't come out of a mummy's womb looking like a sadhu and then blah, blah. It was His Holiness's actual mind pretending to be a sadhu, pretending to be a dog, so he could facilitate this meeting and make things happen. And this is what the Buddhas are doing all the time. So that's not a dog, and it is not a sadhu. But if you're not clairvoyant, you would only ever see a dog there. But it cannot possibly be a dog, meaning a deluded being. It can't possibly. It has to be an extension of the Dalai Lama's mind. That's why the Christian view that you can create a person and then it become ordinary, that's an impossibility. The Buddha's mind can never decrease. It can never become ordinary. So that's what the Buddhas are doing. And this is why the Tibetan literature, the Buddhist literature, they say, you don't know who anybody is, so don't judge. So that's my comment about creator. I hope that helps. Next.
Next question is, can you be attached to Buddhism?
Honey, if you're attached to Buddhism, that means you're neurotic, you're deluded, you over-exaggerate its value, you'll be upset when you do something that, when you don't get what you want, and it won't last. You'll give it up within a few days or weeks. You'll be bored to tears if it's attachment. But honey, put it this way, if you've got virtue and you're doing your practice, and you like Buddhism and you value Buddhism, but because you've also got attachment and you don't have attachment until you're highly advanced, then if you're also attached to your practice, I'm so happy for you because you'll want to do it every day. But it's got to be mixed with virtue. If it's only attachment, it won't last. You'll give it up. And that's what happens very regularly. So you've got to check your mind. But don't be scared of attachment. I mean, I don't meet many. I mean, like Lama Zopa, he loves his practice. He's so blissed out by his practice, But if you don't get bliss, most of us are not attached to our practice. We do it with a difficult mind and can't wait for our breakfast or can't wait for sleep, But at least we try. But if you're attached to it, I'm so happy for you. But if it's only attachment, you're in trouble. And it won't last, sweetheart. You'll go and try something else. You become a communist, then you get bored. Then you become a Muslim, then you get bored. Then you become a tennis player, then you get bored. If it's only attachment, it doesn't last. But if it's mixed with virtue, you're okay. Put it that way. Go on.
Next question is, what is the principal difference between Cooper Mountain of Guru Rinpoche and Amitabha Pure Land?
What's the difference between your house and Katya's house? They're expressions of your mind. Same with Amitabha's Pure Land, same with the gold in the mountain, the Guru Rinpoche. They've got their different shapes and sizes. I mean, look at Tara. She's got, she's got nice breasts and she's a cute girl. And look at Chen Reisig. He's got no breasts and he's a cute boy. Different manifestations of the same Buddha mind. So their Pure Land will be appropriately different. They're all different manifestations of different qualities for the sake of different sentient beings. That's the simple answer. In the ultimate nature, there's no difference. Conventional is the aspect it shows that suits those sentient beings. Go on.
And also the question from the same person. In Pova practice, there are prayers about wish to get reborn.
In Pova practice, what?
In Pova practice, there are prayers about wish to get reborn in Devachen, and also about the world of Vajrayogini. Why is it like that? Is it not going to be mixed up because we focus on two different?
Dewa Chen is, what is Dewa Chen? You mean Dewa Chen is Amitabha, right? I don't know. I forget the Tibetan. So what? Say the whole sentence again. I was very confused.
So in Pova prayers, there is wish to get reborn in Devachen, which is Amitabha Buddha world. And also in the world of Vajrayogini, is it not going to be mixed up?
I don't know. I don't know that practice. I don't know that sadhana. I can't tell you that sadhana. I can only know in Lama Zopa's book, there's a short sadhana written by Lama Yeshe, which is only about Amitabha. I mean, I don't know that sadhana that you're describing, so I can't answer you. I'm so sorry.
So the next question. My mom wants me to take care of my brother after her death. I will promise her so she can die peacefully, but honestly, I don't know if I can fulfill my promise. Can you advise?
What I mean, do we imply that the brother is ridiculous and no good and is living a disastrous life, or she just wants, I mean, what? I don't understand.
I just read.
I know, I understand that. So it seems to me, of course you promise your mother, you will do, I mean, you don't have to lie to your mother. You know what you're capable of. and how much you can help your brother. And that's because you know your brother. So you maybe even know that even if you do 27 things, it might not even help your brother because your brother is part of the deal. So, but it doesn't mean you don't promise your mother that you will do of course you promise her, I will do whatever I can to help him. I promise you, mummy. That does not contradict, because the brother is part of it. You can do everything you can, but he might not get help. He might not want your help. That's not your mistake. But to promise your mother is not wrong. Don't think you're lying. You promise her with absolute sincerity that you do everything you can to help your brother. There's no contradiction. And you be sincere in that, but you be wise. That doesn't mean if he becomes a drug addict, that you have to buy his drugs for him. That's foolish. Helping him means doing something useful and virtuous. But as I said, whether he gets help by it, that's his call. That's up to him. You can't be responsible for what he does. So it's not a contradiction to promise your mother that. And that doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your life for your brother. That's foolish. You do what you can within your limitations and within his limitations. Have the thought, the wish to do that, if you can. And it shouldn't contradict and it shouldn't suffocate you. That's the wrong understanding. Go on.
So the next question is there any difference between helping a dying people and dying pets? Because somebody said, my pet was ill for a long time and died in its sleep. So what can I do to help? And addition is, I heard that I can put, after cremation, I can put it in the tsatsa. You know,
that's right. I don't understand the question. You have to ask the question again because I don't understand it. Ask the first part. That's so I'm confused.
Yes. So what is the difference between helping dying pet and dying person? Is it the same?
So leave it there, that part first. Of course it's the same, but the tools you employ depend upon the capability of the pet and the capability of the person. So if you're helping your beloved brother who's a Buddhist and you're a Buddhist, there's so much more you can do for your brother and there's more your brother can do. But if you're helping your little dog, your dog can do nothing. Everything is reliant upon you knowing how to help your dog. So of course there's a difference in the character of the help, but the principle is exactly the same. That's the first point. You do what, I mean, the dog can't do anything from its own side. So all you can do for the dog is make it peaceful. Okay, died overnight in its own sleep, then, you should have kept its body for a couple of days. You should have had mantras playing for it the whole time. That's what you should have done. I'm not trying to criticize you. That's how you'd help your loved one as well. You'd have mantras playing very quietly, and that would have been marvelous for your dog. And then you'd leave the body for a couple of days until its mind left, and then you would do the cremation. And yes, this is the practice. Then you would have the bit of the ashes blessed. So special with Jungwa. That'll be so powerful for your dog or for your loved one. And then you'd mix those indeed with plaster and have tsatsas made. In this book of Rinpoche's, there's a list of the centers who do this. This is the most marvelous thing you can do. Absolutely. Anybody who's even got ashes from old ashes from years ago from their loved ones, you should get them blessed by some lamas, ask them to do Jungwa. Then you have the ashes mixed with plaster, just some of the ashes, you mix them with plaster and you get tsatsas made or little stupas made or statues made. It's the most beneficial thing you can do for the dog or your loved one. Absolutely. So check with the Geshis in Russia. I mean, I don't know who's there, if they do Jungwa. It's so important. Maybe, Anastasia, you can organize a day when many people send their ashes and can have one big fat Jungwa practice for everybody, not just individual ones. Everybody can send all their ashes or the leftovers of their mothers and daddies' bodies, like the nails or the hair. And then you can have one big fat Jungwa blessing for everybody. It'd be so much, something you should do regularly in Russia for Russians. Do you understand, Anastasia? You must do that. So important. To open it up to people, and they could. I mean, even ashes from 20 years ago. Send a little bit. Don't have to send a lot. Send a little bit. So special. Again, read Rinpoche's instructions in the book. He praises this practice so much. It can be so beneficial for people who've died, even if they're in the lower realms. That can help them. Is what Rinpoche says. And then he says, going to the what do they call the place where they bury the bodies? What do they call that? A cemetery. Just going to the cemetery and putting flowers on your loved one's grave is no use to anybody. But if they've been blessed, if the ashes have been blessed or the body, it's so beneficial for you and the loved one. There's merit involved. What else?
It's the last question. Is it better to cremate the body or get it buried?
I think no difference. No difference.
That's it.
Because, if you think of the body, if you bury it, the advantage of burying it, if you've done all the blessings and had the body buried with mantras and blessed the body with different things, then you could say the body has got blessings. So all the creatures who eat that body, they'll get some blessing from it. But at the same time, if you do this other one of making tsatsars out of the ashes, then you can make tsatsars, make stupas, make statues. That's really beneficial. And Rinpoche also says, if the ashes have been blessed, you can also throw them into the water. Whoever touches that water will be blessed. Throw them into the air. Whoever touches them will get blessed. So there's so many advantages to doing this. And again, it's all in the book. And you could be like the Tibetans and who have sky burial. I don't know if they still do it, where they would have certain people whose job it was. They go up into the Rocky Mountains and they'd cut up the body into pieces, and all the soft bits and all the hard bits are there, and all the hawks, all the vultures are all waiting, and then they get the call and all the vultures come and they eat the lot. It's very efficient. I think cemeteries are so stupid, using up all that good real estate. Convert nice apartments for people. It's ridiculous. Having dead ashes in the ground and revering the dead ashes, it's ridiculous. Excuse me, I'm not being rude. Well, I am being rude. I'm always rude, but I'm not trying to be insulting. What else? Nothing, that's it. Well, I mean, we've talked about most things. They all came out of the questions, So the thing is, the things to do after. So once the mind has stopped, so once the breath has stopped, then you try to, what to do with your loved ones, if they die at home. Best is to keep them there for 3 days and do practices day and night. If your loved one dies in hospital, if you've got even a half an hour, there's certain things you can do, to do the prayers and practices. And then you would pull their hair here, that's in the book, to try and maybe help the consciousness release from there and go to a pure land. If you can, then they can take care of the body, but try not to disturb the body too much. It's so important. If your loved one gives their organs, I think we talked about this, it could be problematic. We talked about this, didn't we, Diana? About cutting out your organs, the difficulties of it. That could be quite problematic. Read Rinpoche's book. And then, but you do, so it's, So then if your loved one dies suddenly, in all of these cases, you need, if you've got the education that's recommended in this book and you know what you're doing, then you keep your wits about you. You don't freak out and give all the power over to the nurses and doctors and ambulances, and just weep. There's no benefit. You've got to be in charge of this, knowing what you're doing, knowing why you're doing it, knowing how to help the person's mind. And if your loved one is a meditator, when you leave them in peace, they know what they're doing. Great yogis, they can die very blissfully. They can stay in meditation for days. And then when the mind leaves the body, then there's certain things you can do. You get you wrap the body with the mantras, you have the funeral, you can talk about impermanence, you can talk about, all these things, and then you can do the burning or the burying, but you keep some ashes aside, and then you can do the jangwa, and then you can make the tsatsars or the stupas, and then also there's many other practices you can do, which I recommend. You can do lots of practices. You can make sure you use all the money of the loved one to do good things. It's really good for their karma. You can do practice, you can use their money to make books, you can use their money to support the monasteries. There's so many things you can do. Rinpoche gives many ideas in the book. Everything you do, every piece of advice in this book is solely for the benefit of the person who dies. The mouse, the ant, the dog, grandma, same. And that's it. 1:45, 15 more minutes there. What to say? I've run out of words. No more questions, Katja?
No.
Well, we can always leave it
Oh,
on.
actually, did we last time there was a question about near-death experience, and you said you will explain more about it next
okay,
time.
good. All right, let me discuss that. Okay, good. This is something similar to that guy. That guy, exactly the question, that Christian who saw Jesus. Oh, yeah, that's right. At the end of his experience, it was very interesting when Jesus completely encompassed him and he was in complete bliss. And he said he wanted to go with Jesus. Well, of course you would. But Jesus says, no, go back and help me. So he went back and he served Jesus. So that's a near-death experience. So I explained right there in many ways. It depends on the concepts in your mind. I mean, if you're an Australian Aboriginal and you have that experience, believe me, you won't say there's Jesus. It's not as if he comes with a sign on his forehead. If you're a Buddhist, some green naked lady might come, but she doesn't have a name on her called Tara, but because you've got familiarity with that, you've done prayers to Tara, you've conceptualized Tara, you imagine Tara, so you would see what you call Tara. This is all karmic appearances, but you see, hell is a karmic appearance created by us. Animals is a karmic appearance. Spirits are karmic. Everything is your karmic appearance. All of this is implying emptiness. So it's quite hard to understand it if we don't understand emptiness. There's nothing out there that is intrinsically that. So Jesus does not exist intrinsically as Jesus. It's the way you label that because you've got a connection with a person you call Jesus. A Buddhist has a connection with what she calls Tara. The Australian Aboriginal, God knows what they would see, but it won't be called Tara, and they won't get it. They'll get a big surprise if some white dude comes along called Jesus. They won't see that. They'll see what their karma is. That's why in the hell realms, you see terrible experiences which you've created from your own negativity, your own suffering. As Lama Yeshe says, hell is not some place where the devil is waiting, you know, in this self-existent place out there created by God to punish you, saying, ha ha, I'm waiting for Lama Yeshe. Hell is the manifestation of the past negative energy of that sentient being. So that guy, the Christian, that was a manifestation of his past practice. Then, all of these things. Even another experience in the same movie with this other fellow who was an alcoholic, and he had an experience too. And he's walking on a tunnel. People always talk about walking on a tunnel. And he said at the end of the tunnel was this hideous fire. And it was hell. And in hell were his different friends in their own form, their own body. He could see them. And they were who died. And they were shouting at him, go back, don't come here, go back, go back. So he went back and he served Jesus as well. I mean, and you would, wouldn't you? Well, I mean, that's the karmic appearance. I remember there's when I was working for Wisdom, for Mandala magazine, we did excerpts from a particular book by one Tibetan Lama who lived in Brazil, I think. I can't remember his name now. And his mother was a particular kind of person they called, and now I can't remember the name. God, what was the name? One word beginning with a D in Tibetan. And it's a particular kind of person, mostly women, who can literally lie down and with their subtle mind go to all the different realms of existence and then have conversations with them all and get teachings and then come back and tell the teachings. Well, you know, I saw Annie Tenzin and she talked about this and that, and if only she hadn't done this, then she wouldn't be in hell. And another one said she was in this realm. I mean, it sounds hilarious, like stories for a child, you know, but it was a day long is the word. She was a day long. She had the power to have these out-of-body experiences, not near-death experiences. There's two kinds. She didn't nearly die. She was able to consciously have her mind, which was clairvoyant, to be in these different places, in these different realms, and come back with stories from these different people that they knew who died and gone to hell, gone to the spirit realms or whatever. Very fascinating. But near-death experience is the one like this fellow had. He was going towards, you know, people can gradually go through the deconstruction process and then they can come back. They can stop breathing and then they can come back. And this is something I might have mentioned. I mean, this is something we see in all cultures all over the world. People have these experiences. They report these experiences. They stop breathing. Lama Zopa in his book even mentions some Indian or Nepali fellow for whom this happened repeatedly. He'd stop breathing. They put him in the coffin. They get ready to burn him and he comes back to life, you know. So this is interesting too with the business, the whole business of cutting organs, giving organs. I think I quoted this from this book by an American journalist called Nick Teresi. He wrote this book called The Undead, which is not about zombies. It's all the problems and contradictions in the American medical system now. He's a medical reporter about when actually death occurs. And one of the reasons is because of these people coming back to life. I mean, in the materialist model, they don't know what to do with that. They can't explain it. And he had, and also these out-of-body experiences. He had a whole chapter, I might have mentioned, of all these people who during their operations were able to report vividly exactly what happened, the experience of floating above their body. Again, like with that fellow in the Christian one in the hallway, in the corridor, he didn't leave his body. That day long, that woman, the mother of this meditator, this Tibetan Lama, she didn't leave her body, but your mind is able to go to different places. It stays in your mind, it stays in your body. It's a subtle consciousness, but you're able to extend your awareness. It's literally called clairvoyance. You extend your awareness to these other places. And that's eventually what we all need. Buddha says we can't really begin to benefit sentient beings until we've got clairvoyance. And you begin to get serious clairvoyance when you have accomplished the sutra practice of single-pointed concentration. Lama Yeshe talks about this in his Mahamudra book. It's just natural. It's just a part of the capability of the mind to be able to see the past and the future and other places. These great yogis can do this effortlessly, you know. These people have these experiences, but they can't do them again. They don't know why they can do them. So these people in this book, or who reported these out-of-body experiences floating above their body while it was while it was unconscious in the operation. You know, this is again all the things that people are saying. So that these doctors cannot explain why, when the brain is dead. You know, it's not possible. So they don't have, so it's causing them, I think, it's wonderful to question their assumptions about what is consciousness. One doctor was quoted in this book, who's in this business of giving organs, cutting organs. He said, I can now say with certainty that that consciousness is not physical. Consciousness is not the brain. I don't know what it is, but this I can say. So that's excellent people are questioning. So there's these two where you begin to die, you do this deconstruction of the elements and you actually stop breathing, but your karma's not over. So you come back to life again. That's not uncomplicated. The other one is simply you access your subtle mind, which has the capability of seeing long distance, of literally being there, but you don't leave your body. And that day-long lady, she was able to do that and go to all the different realms and come back and report what the different people say, you know. So technically, like that, the fellow, the alcoholic, who saw his friends in their own human body in this big fire, obviously it's not, you can't be living in a fire. So it's the karmic appearance he has. I mean, his friends, their minds were probably in an experience of hell, but he saw them in the aspect of the human that he knew. Like if you're living in a house that they say is haunted, and people even see this 18th century lady dressed in her clothing, she's not technically that 18th century lady any longer. Her mind is there as a spirit, which you can't see, but she looks in that aspect, which was the aspect she had 4 centuries ago. So when the day long, this lady went to these other realms, she can't have seen that particular Annie Tenzin in a human body in the hell realm because Annie Tenzin was finished, but she saw her in the aspect of Annie Tenzin. So this is how our mind creates appearances of things, you know. This is all proving emptiness, every bit of it. Does that help? I hope so. I think we're finished. Enough. Done. Okay, you people? So we think, may we, any of this, if we get the book and read it and get some instructions and know how to help the ant, the mouse, the dog, auntie, your uncle, whoever, your Christian auntie, your communist uncle, you adjust it to their needs. And the key bottom line is you be kind and loving and supportive. And that's the general one, always that, for the mouse, the dog, the baby, whoever. And only know that you want to help their mind so that when they die, they can get another decent human rebirth. So you help your Catholic auntie, whatever it is, you learn. It's education we all need. And then you can die peacefully and carry on practicing your path, okay? And if and my email is always there if ever you want to talk to me. I'm not saying you have to talk to me, but if you want, do not hesitate. And I send you all so much love, and I'm so happy to be together again, and we'll be together again soon. And may bodhicitta grow and grow and grow in the hearts of all. Jangchub, Semchub, Rinpoche. Ma kie panam ke gyochig, kie panyampa me pa yang gong ne gong du, paba shok. Gewadi Nudodag, Lama Sange Drugyone, Drawati Kyang Malupa, Dei Sala Gurpa Shog. And may all the work you're doing there in Russia is so marvelous. I so rejoice, and I'm so happy to support you, and you keep on moving and never give up, helping sentient beings. All right, sweethearts. Thank you. It's a pleasure, Jorge. A pleasure, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Venerable.
you. See you all
Thank
again.
Would like to thank you for these incredible teachings. Thank you very much for connection with Rinpoche's teachings in this book and this inspiration to know more on this uneasy topic for many of us. And thank you for giving this in such an amazing lightweighted way. I don't know.
Well, if we don't laugh, we'll cry, wouldn't we?
Yes, sure. So, and we really would like to meet you here soon, personally. And of course, if it will be possible, we'll ask you for more teachings online while we are in pandemic. So we are really happy. We really love you and want more teachings with you.
Good, darling. So happy. Thank you so much, Anastasia. Thank you, dearest Diana. And all you kind people, and also, you know, Andre, everybody who works for the center, and all of you people who study and think about it, and people from other countries as well. Thank you. And there's all of you. Much love, everybody. And we never give up. We keep moving, okay? Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank
sweetheart.
you so much.
Thank you, darlings. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Спасибо. До свидания.
Спасибо, спасибо.
Спасибо большое.
Спасибо.
Спасибо большое всем.
Всем большое спасибо и огромное спасибо Диане.